Good morning, everyone. So, this week we will discuss about hyperbola. So, the properties and parts of the hyperbola is being discussed during our Google meeting. So, this time I am explaining to you our examples in our PowerPoint presentation. So, pure explanation lang ito ng mga examples natin. So, since ang parts ng hyperbola and some properties is discussed during a Google meeting. So, this is the standard equation of our hyperbola at the center at origin. So, first is x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. So, since x squared is anchored by the a squared, so therefore our orientation of our graph is in the x-axis or pa-horizontal. Next is y squared over a squared. So since a is anchored to y, so therefore our hyperbola is naka-vertical. So next is center at HK or any points sa ating Cartesian plane. So, the first standard equation, so x minus h squared over a squared. So, since ang a is anchored by the x-axis, so therefore, the orientation of our graph is pa-horizontal. So, ang isa pa-vertical. So, A is the center to vertex or ito yung distance A. So, yung distance ng center to vertex or half of the transverse axis. B is half of the conjugate axis and C is the focal distance or the distance from the center to focus. To compute the relationship of A, B, and C, so we use the formula C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So, kung A ang unknown, so i-derive na lang natin yung formula. Kung B ang unknown, so i-derive na lang ang formula from the main formula na C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Okay, so our first given example, if the focal distance of hyperbola is 10 units, so given ang focal distance which is C equals 10. C equals 10. And half of its transverse axis is 8. So half of transverse is 8. So therefore, A equals 8. What is the distance from the center of hyperbola to one of the endpoints of the conjugate axis? So therefore, ang question is ang B or ating i-compute is B, which is the half of conjugate axis. Ito yung i-compute. So therefore, B ang unknown. So from the formula na C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So, i-derive ang formula magiging C squared minus A squared equals B squared or B squared equals C squared minus A squared. So, ipang-substitute ang given, C is 10, magiging 10 squared. A is 8. So, B squared equals 10 times 10 is 100. 8 times 8 is 64. So, B squared equals 36. So, square root, cancel. B is 6. So, therefore, the distance from the center of the hyperbola to the endpoints of the conjugate axis is 6 units. Okay, next. The foci of the hyperbola are 8, positive, negative 8, 0. So, find the distance from the center of the hyperbola to one of its vertices if the endpoints of the conjugate axis is at 0, in positive, negative, 6. Okay, so let's compute. So since ang given is foci ng hyperbola, so illustrate natin sa ating Cartesian plane. Given is positive 8 and negative 8, 0. And then the endpoints of the conjugate axis is 0, positive 6, and negative 6. Ayan. So, possible ang ating hyperbola paana. Ayan. So, our A, since ang A is center, so center to vertex, so from the center to vertex, there is, so dili, wala man nato na-identify kung unsa niyang vertex, so therefore unknown ang A. Ang B is half of the conjugate axis, so ito man yung B. B is 6. Then C is the focal distance, so center to focus. So since ito yung center, then ito yung focus, so therefore 8. C is 8. So ang ating i-compute is the value ng ating A. So from the main formula, i-derive ang formula, so magiging A squared equals C squared minus B squared. So substitute C8 squared minus 6 squared. 8 times 8 is 64 minus 36. So 64 minus 36 is 28. So square root. So A is, the square root of 28 is 2 times square root of 7, or 5.29. 5.29. So this is now our answer. Okay, next example. The foci of a hyperbola are positive, negative 4, 0. So find the distance from the center of the hyperbola to one of its vertices if P negative 5, 3 is a point on a graph. So first is i-illustrate natin ang foci and a point. So the foci is negative 4 and positive 4. Then, ang point is negative 5, 3. Ayan. Okay. So, to compute, we use the distance formula. So, same sa ellipse, nagamit ang distance formula. So, i-compute na to ang distance ani. Distance 1, of distance 2. So, since this is now our focal distance, so, ma-identify man na to ang distance ani, which is, ilan man ni? 8. So, ang distance diri, wala pa siya na-identify. So, therefore, ato siyang i-compute. Ang distance from the point. Okay, the given point is negative 5, 3. So, we use the distance formula to arrive the answer. So, take notes sa hyperbola. Distance 2 minus, so the absolute value of distance 2 minus distance 1, or distance 1 minus distance 2, since naka-absolute value equals to A. So, first, i-compute muna natin ang distance 1. So, the formula for distance, x of 2 minus x of 1 squared plus y of 2 minus y of 1 squared. So, ito yung point ng x of 2. So, ito yung x of 2, y of 2. Then, ito na yung point. Ang point na isa, negative 4, 0. Ang isa, positive 4, 0. So, i-substitute lang. So, magiging x of 2 is negative 5 minus x of 1 is negative 4. So, negative 4. Y of 2 is 3. Y of 1 is 0. So, magiging negative 5 plus 4 squared plus 3 squared. So, negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. So, negative 1 squared plus square root of negative 1 squared is 1 times. Negative 1 times 1 is 1. Plus 3 times 3 is 9. So, therefore, our distance 1 is square root of 10. Okay, so our distance 2. So, kani. So, negative 5 minus 4 plus positive 3 minus 0 square root of negative 9 squared plus 3 squared. Negative 9 times negative 9 is positive 81 plus 3 times 3 is 9. So 81 plus 9 square root of 90. So square root of 90 is 3 times square root of 10. Yeah, so our distance 2 is 3 times square root of 10. So substitute, so distance 2 minus distance 1 equals 2a. So our distance 2 is 3 times square root of 10. And minus our distance 1 is square root of 10 equals 2a. So 3 times square root of 10 minus square root of 10 is, since naman yung invisible 1 diri, so 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 times square root of 10 equals 2a. So divide sa 2, i-divide sa 2. So a is square root of 10 or in decimal. So, pwedeng naka-radical form, pwedeng naka-decimal form. Square root 3.16 or 3.16. So, this is now our answer. So, since ang pangitan is half of the transverse axis or from the center to vertex. So, distance from center to vertex. So, our answer is square root of 10. Okay, so let's proceed to next example. So, what is the standard form of equation of a hyperbola with center at the origin? Transverse axis is on the x-axis, a equals 5 and b equals 3. This is the standard equation, center at the origin. So, magpili lang ta either sa duha. So, since ang our transverse axis or our A is at the x-axis, so therefore, ang A at the x-axis. So, kana ato ang himuon. Kana ato ang sulugan. So, x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. So, since given ang a equals 5, b equals 3, so i-substitute lang. So, x squared over 5 squared minus y squared over 3 squared. So, substitute. So, then reduce, magiging 25, magiging 9. So, this is now our answer. So, the standard equation is x squared over 25 minus y squared over 9. Okay, next, determine the standard form of equation of hyperbola whose center is at 2, 1. So, given ang center at the 2, 1, so dari siya. Since center at h key, so form h key. 2, -1, transverse axis is vertical. So, when you say vertical, naa siya sa y. So, dari. So, vertical man. So, y-axis. So, kani ato ang gamiton. B equals 8 and C equals 10. So, since ang naadari is A and B, then ang given is B and C. So, therefore, i-derive muna natin yung ang answer sa A. So, from the formula na C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So, i-derive natin ang formula ng A squared. So, magiging C squared minus B squared. So, A squared equals C is 10, B is 8. So, 10 times 10 is 100, 8 times 8 is 64. So, minus 36. So, A squared is 36, is square root, para ma-cancel ang radical. So, 6. So, 8 is 6. Okay, so since our center is 2, -1, so our center is in the form of h key. So, therefore, our h is 2, our key is -1. So, substitute. Since vertical, ang transverse axis pa vertical, so therefore nasa y-axis. So, kani atong gamiton. Y minus k squared over a squared minus x minus h squared over b squared equals 1. Y minus our k is 2, our a is 6, our h is, I k is -1, I k is -1, -1, h is 2, b is 8. So, magiging y plus 1, 36. X minus 2, 8 times 8 is 64. So, this is now our equation. Okay, next example. Determine the standard form of the equation of a hyperbola with vertices at 3, 1 and 11, 1 and foci at 3, 1 and 17, 1. So, since given ang foci and the vertices, so therefore, i-plot natin siya sa ating graph before natin i-compute. So, 3, 1. The vertices is 3, 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So, there. Ang isa is 11, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yan. So 3, 1, 11, 1. Then, ang foci is negative 3, 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So, diri. Yan. So, possible, ang graph natin is, paano atong graph? So, diri ang vertex. So, foci is 17, 1. Isa, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11. 17, 1, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 1. Okay. So, from the given, negative 3, 1, 17, 1, 11, 1. Yan. So, since our A is from the center to vertex, so asa man ang center ani? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, therefore, 4 ilang center? 1, 2, 3, 4. So, there 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, the center is in 7, 1. So, the center is, tama, 7, 1. Yan. So, ang A is center to vertex. So, from the center to vertex, mag-count ta. So, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 units. So, our A is 4. And B is the half of conjugate axis. So, since hindi given ang conjugate axis, so unknown, our C is the center to focus. So, center to focus, which is diri atong focus. So, 4 man na dira. So, mag-count ta. Continue ang counting. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, C is 10. So, from the given formula, C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So, i-derive natin ang formula for B. So, B squared equals C squared minus A squared. C 10 squared minus 4 squared. 100 minus 4 times 4. 4 is 60. 84. B squared equals 84. So, hindi na natin i-square root ha kasi since ang gipangita is standard form of equation, sa ating form is B squared man na siya. So, mag-stop na ta sa B squared. Yan. Kasi B squared naman yung i-substitute sa given na standard equation. So, since ang formation sa ating graph, paano siya? So, naasa x-axis ang ating A or transverse axis. So, therefore, nasa x-axis. So, kani atong gamiton. Ang A nasa x-axis. X minus h squared over A squared minus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. So, substitute x minus our h is 7. Our a squared is 16. 4 times 4, 16 minus y minus our k is 1 over b squared is 84 plus 1. So this is now our standard form of equation. Okay, so next example. Determine the center of the hyperbola and the orientation of its principal axis represented by the equation below. So x minus 2 squared over 4 minus y minus 3 squared over 9. So since ito yung a squared, di ba? Di ba sa given equation, so a squared, b squared, a squared, b squared, so wala nag-change iyang formation. So therefore, our a is 2, our b is 3. So, then h and k. So, since x na dira, so therefore diri. So, the principal axis is taas sa horizontal. Yan. So, h is 2, k is 3. So, the center is in the form of HK. So, therefore, the center is H is 2, K is 3. Then, the orientation, so since x-axis, so pa-horizontal. Orientation. Pa-horizontal. Okay, next, find the distances A, B, and C of the hyperbola represented by the equation below. So, since our A is 2, our B is 3, since sa pangitaon lang man kay A, B, ug C, so C na lang kulang. So, from the formula, C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So, A is 2, B squared is 3, so 4 plus 9 was 13. So, a square root para ma-cancel lang. C equals square root of 13, or kung gusto mo decimal, square root of 13 is 3.61. 3.61. Ayan. Okay, next. Determine the coordinates of the endpoints of the transverse axis and conjugate axis of the hyperbola represented by the equation below. So, transverse of conjugate ang A of B. So, since y squared over 4 minus x squared over 25 equals 1. So, our A is 2. Kay 2 times 2 is 4. Our B is 5. So, 5 times 5 is 25. So, ang formation y squared. So, kani. So, therefore, pa-vertical ato ang graph, ana. So, pa-vertical, since ang center is nasa origin, nasa 0, 0. So, i-illustrate sa Cartesian plane. So, center lies at the origin. Yan. So, since pa-vertical, ana, ang A na to is 2 units. 1, 2. So, 2 units pataas. So, dira. Saan ni? 0, 2. 2 units po pababa. 0, negative 2. 0, negative 2. So, our A ay transverse axis. Transverse axis is 0, 2 and 0, negative 2. Okay, so next, our is 5 units from the half of the conjugate axis, so from the center, mag-count taong 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, dara. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, dara. Negative 5, positive 5. So, ang graph na ito, anis, is mawani atong vertex. So, paana. Paana. So, this is our conjugate axis. Yan. So, our conjugate axis is 5, 0, 5, 0. So, this is negative 5, 0. Yan. So, conjugate is negative 5, 0, and yan. Okay, next example. Sketch the graph of the hyperbola represented by the equation. So, ito yung previous na equation. X squared over 4 minus y squared over 9 equals 1. So, our A is 2. Our B is 3. So, since na-compute na nato ni ganina, so our C is square root of 13, or pag i-decimal ang square root of 13, 3.61. So, 3.61. So, since sketch ang graph, so illustrate natin ang graph. So, since ang angkol sa A, transverse axis is ang X, so therefore, nasa X-axis or sa naka-horizontal ating graph. So, since naka X and Y, so our center is at the origin. So, this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. Center at the origin. So, since naka-horizontal, so our A is count of 2 units padulong sa 1, 2. Diri, 1, 2 gihapon. Then, our y transverse axis, so from the center to half of the conjugate axis, so from the center, mag-count of 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So, 3. Negative 3, positive 3. So, na-illustrate na pala natin kanina, no? Then, our C is 3.61. So, dari ang 3, dari ang 4. 3, negative. So, 3.61, possible dara. Yan. Ang distance is 3.61. So, ang isa, dali. Ito yung vertex natin. Yan. So, our conjugate axis. So, dyan. So, therefore, pag ganyan yung graph. Then, this is our focus. So, this is our transverse axis. Yan. So, this is our asymptote. Ang asymptote, mag-agi siya sa gilid sa ating imaginary na rectangle of the center. Yan. So, from the endpoint sa imaginary triangle, agi siya sa center. So, this is our asymptote. When you say asymptote, so it is a straight line near the graph. Doon siya sa graph, but never touches. Yan. So, this is our graph for this equation. So, next, sketch the graph of the hyperbola represented by the equation below. So, y minus k ang given equation, so carry. So, our k is 3. Our H is, K is negative 3. So, additive inverse lang sa given H is 4. So, therefore, our center is in the form of HK. So, therefore, our center is 4, negative 3. Then, A squared. So, since 16, so our A, so our A is 4. Since wala siya denominator, na imaginary 1. So, therefore, our B is 1. Okay, so our center is 4, negative 3. So, there is 4, negative 3. So, from the center, since an A is center to vertex, so from the center, so since ang orientation natin is naka-y-axis man siya, so pa y. So, from the center, count ta og 4 units pataas. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, there 4 units pa ubos. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, there 3, negative 3, negative 4, 5, 6, negative 7. So, 1, 4, 4, 1. The ordered pair is 4, 1. The area is 4, negative 7. So, this is now our vertex. So, vertex, ito ha, vertex. Yan. So, and this is our center. So, next is our B is the transverse axis. So, from the center, mag-count ta og 1. So, dere lang. So, dere 5. So, dere. Okay, so ganyan lang. So, since this is now our vertex, so, from the endpoint sa ating imaginary rectangle, mga taog asymptote. And, so, asymptote is the boundary of our graph. Since ito yung vertex, so, paano ato ang graph? So, this is our full vertex. So, therefore, opens upward. And sa baba, opens downward. So, this is now our graph. Okay, so next example. Point P is on a hyperbola. The distance P from the first focus is 6 units. Okay, so si point P down na siya sa hyperbola. The distance from first focus, for example, this is the focus 1. First focus is 6 units. So this is the focus 1. So the distance from the first focus is 6 units more than is distance from the second focus. So kung this is the first focus, and kung this is the second focus, ang ingon diri so ang distance daw ani from point P to first focus is 6 units more than, so plus 6 more than sa distance sa second focus. So since hindi natin identified kung ilan yung distance ng point to focus 2, so therefore ibutang nato na variable x. So since ang distance of first focus is 6 units more than its distance from the second focus. So therefore, kung ang first focus is x, so ang second focus is x plus 6 kay ang kani daw na distance mas dako og 6 units compared sa kani na distance. Yan. So what is the distance of the center of a vertex to our hyperbola? Center to vertex. Since center to vertex is A, ang i-compute na to is ang A. So, take note sa solving hyperbola to compute for A is the absolute value of the two distances. So, distance 2 minus distance 1 or distance 1 minus distance 2 since the absolute value is positive ang result equals to A. So, ang isa ka distance ka x plus 6 minus ang isa ka distance is x. So, naka-absolute value equals to A. So, magiging x plus 6 minus 6 equals to A. So, x plus 6. So, x minus x plus 6 equals to A. So, cancel out. 6 na lang bilhin. Kaya x minus x is 0. Over 2 over 2. So, A equals 3. So, therefore, the distance from center to vertex is 3 units. Okay, next example. What is the equation of the hyperbola whose center is the origin has a horizontal principal axis? So, since origin sa kani. So, horizontal principal axis sa kani. So, horizontal sa x-axis siya. So, therefore, ang gamiton is x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. So, mani atong sa double. The value of a is 4. So, a is 4.915 is on the hyperbola. So, since ang given a up point, so therefore, ato na siya is substitute given na equation. So, x is 9 squared over a is 4 squared, y is 14. So, unknown ang b squared. Equals 1. So, first, i-compute mo din ang values sa so, p1 over 16 minus 15 14 squared is 196 over b squared equals 1. Yan. So, magiging so, para mag-positive, ibalhin sa pika. 81 over 16. So, kani mahimo na siyang minus 1. So, kani mahimong plus. So, magiging 196 over b squared. So, positive na sila. So, 81 over 16 minus 1. So, the answer is 65 over 16. 65 over 16 over 196. Diretso na ni-compute sa calculator ha, scientific calculator. B squared. Then, i-cross multiply. Yan. Ang b squared, i-multiply sa 65. So, magiging 65 b squared. Then, ang 16, i-multiply sa 196. Yan. Then, i-divide sa 65. I-divide sa 65. Cancel. So, ganun na. So, b squared equals 16 times 196. 3,136. So, 3,136 over 65. So, b squared equals, then i-divide So 3,136 divided by 65. So the answer is 48.25. So square root b equals 48.25. Dili na day nato square root. Magstay na ta dili. Okay, so since dili na to need ang value sa b squared lang kay ang gipangita is equation. So since ang equation is b squared, so mag-stop na ta diri o compute. Then, i-substitute, equation man ang gipangita, x squared over our a is 4. 4 times 4, 16. Minus y squared over our b squared is 48.25 equals 1. So, this is now our equation. Yan, ito na yung equation natin. Okay, so next example. Point P is on a hyperbola with a vertical principal axis. So, patindog na. And whose center is the origin? The distance P from the first focus is 12 units. So, since pa-vertical, so ang focus na dira. Focus to na diri. Unlike sa horizontal, sa ingon ani ang formation. So, since naka-vertical, sa ingon ani ang formation. So, point P is on the hyperbola. So, first focus is 12 units more than its distance. O, almost the same lang ilahang kuandera a problem. So, ang isa is ang point. Yan. So, the distance P from the focus is 12 units more than. Mali ato ang illustration. So, possible diri ang point. Kay x plus 12 mani diri. Then, ang isa is x. So, ang measurement ani is 20. Measurement nila is 20 units. So, C is the focal distance center of the focus. So, ang center nila dira. So, 10, 10. So, our C is 10. So, to compute for A, same ani, to compute for A, distance 2 minus distance 1. So, distance 2, mali na to, our C is 10. So, to compute for A, so distance 2 minus distance 1 equals 2A. So, x plus 12, then x plus 12 minus ang isa is x equals 2a. So, cancel. So, x minus x is 0 naman. So, 12 na lang bilhin. Over 2. So, our a is 6. So, our a is 6. Since ang question, equation ato ang i-compute. Ato ang ikuhaon. Equation na naka vertical. So, since ang center ani is origin man, so, naadiri. So, naka-vertical kani. Since nanatay A, B na lang ang kulang. So, since ang given kay C of A man. So, nanatay C, nanatay A. Erase na. So, to compute for B, so, darita magamit taog, mag-derive taog formula. So, B squared equals C squared minus A squared. So, our C is 10. So, 10 squared minus 6 squared. So, B squared, 10 squared is 100. 6 squared is 36. So, 100 minus 36 is Pila man? 64? 64, 60, 70. 64. So, b squared is, so mag-stop na ta din. So, dili na nato i-proceed ha. So, since ang naa sa given is b squared man na equation. So, mag-stop ta dira. Next is, ang pangutana is equation. So, ato. Then, vertical. Then, origin ang, so, diri. Kani ato ang, sundogon. Y squared over a squared minus x squared over b squared equals 1. So, y squared, our a is 6. So, 6 times 6, 36. Minus x squared, our b squared is 64 plus 1. So, this is now our equation. Okay, so next example. So, this is an example of the real life scenario, example of an hyperbola or problems involving hyperbola. So, the sides of a cooling tower, so as you can see, the cooling tower is a shape of hyperbola. So, mag-drawing tag cooling towers. Yan. So, this is the cooling towers. So, the cooling tower represent a hyperbola. The width of the slimmest part of the tower is 64 meters. Katong pinaka-slim. So, ang width is 64 meters. The diameter of the top of the cooling tower is 16 meters. Yan, 60. Distance nila is 60. Find the equation. So, find the equation of the hyperbola that represents the slip part is mali di ang problem. Okay, so ulit kasi kulang ang nakopya ko na problem. So, the sides of a cooling tower represent a hyperbola. So, kanisya na shape is hyperboloid. The width of the slimmest part of the cooling tower is 50 meters. So, 50. Ihang length. From this point to this point is 50 meters. So, the length from this point to the top is 64 meters. So, from the slimmest part, hangtod diri sa babaw, is 64 meters. The diameter of the top, so ang diameter ani nila is 60. Yan, 60. So, gikan dira is 60. Find the equation of the hyperbola that represents the side of the cooling tower. Set the middle of the slimmest part as the origin. So, ang middle daw aning slimmest part is the origin. So, therefore, since 50 na sila, so, bihati into 2. So, therefore, ang ordered pair aning isa is 25, 0. So, kaning isa, negative 25, 0. So, 25 plus 25 equals 50. Yan. Then, kani, 60 man ang diameter sa taas. So, hation. So, 30 na ni diri. So, ang ordered pair ani is, ordered pair ani. 30, 30. 64, 30. So, since 64 man ni sila kataas na 64. Yan. So, ang ordered pair ani diri na dulo is 64, 30, Ay, 3064 pala. 3064. Kasi y-axis yung 64. Diri, negative 3064. Si 30 plus 30 equals 60. Ayan. So, pagitaon nato ang since equation, so pagitaon nato ang A and B. Then, ang center is at the origin. Then, paana man siya sa x-axis. So, kani ato ang equation. So, sundugon na natin na equation is x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. So, from the given, so since this is our center, this is our vertex, center to vertex is pila man? So, center to vertex, so our A is from the center to vertex. Yan. So, our A is 25. Okay, 25 plus 25 equals 50. So, since nanatay A equals 25, so hindi natin ma-identify pa ang B. Pero given ang point na 30, 64. So, i-substitute natin sa ating given na equation. So, substitute. X is 30, y is 64. So, 30 squared over A is 25, 25 squared minus y is 64. So, our y is 64 squared over b squared equals 1. So, ganyan. So, next is kani i-transpose since negative man siya para mag-positive, ibalhin nato diri. Ibalhin nato diri na side. Kana ibalhin diri sa plus. So, 30 squared over 25 squared. So, mag-change iyang sign. Minus 1 equals 64 squared over b squared. So, i-compute na diretso sa calculator. So, magiging 119 over 25. I-input na niya sa scientific calculator. So, 119 over 25 equals 64. 64 squared is 4096. 4096 over this. The next is i-cross multiply. Magiging 119 i-multiply sa b squared. So, ang 4096 i-multiply sa 20. Yan. So, i-divide sa 119, i-divide sa 119. So, b squared equals, so, i-multiply 4096 times 20. So, 102,400. Divide 119. So, b squared is b squared is 860.50. So, mag-stop ang computation sa b squared since the given equation is b squared. So, substitute. So, substitute na lang nato diri ha. Ang A natin is, pila man to itong A? 25. So, 25 squared. So, 25 times 25. 625. So 625. So our computations for b squared is 860.50. So this is now our equation. Okay, so sa last example, two stations A and B are along a straight line. Along a straight coast. For example, diri ang coastal area. So A and B. A and B. Okay. Such that station A is 100 miles west. So west is 100 miles west of station B. So diri ang A, diri ang B. Kay ang A is west man siya sa station B. Ano ba ang west? Ang tama, west sa station B. Next, they both transmit radio signals at the speed of 186,000 miles per second. A ship sailing the sea is 50 miles from the coast. So, magbutang taog for example, diri ang ship. Ang ship is 50 miles. Ang kalayoan niya from the shoreline or coastline is 50 miles. The radio signals from station B arrives at the sheet point 002 of a second earlier than the radio signal. So ang station B mas dali siya nakasagap og signal kaysa sa station E. So mas una naabot diri ang signal compared to station E. So mas pas o 0.002 second. So where is the ship? So ang pangutana, asa daw ang ship? So where is the ship? Set the midpoint of A and B as the origin. So since ang A is miles, 100 miles naman sila, so ang center as the origin. Since given ang 100 miles distance from A to B, so therefore tag 25 ay tag 50-50 sila. 50-50. Ayan. So mag-erase ta diri sa computation sa isa. Okay, so ang ship is 50. So ang pangutana is where is the ship? So unsa daw ang distance ani diri? Dira banda. So since 50 man na, yan, so 50 ni diri. So ang point sa ship is x50. Kaya wala man ta kabalo unsa ni diri. Say value diri. Pero ang value dira is 50. So take note given ang time o ang rate. So ang rate is 186,000 miles per second. Ang time na naabot is 0.002 second. So take note the formula of a distance. Diba ang formula sa distance is rate times time. So ang given na rate is 186,000 i-multiply sa time na 0.002. Yan. So, i-multiply 186,000 times 0.0002. So, tatlong pa zero. So, the distance is 37 So, note, di ba, ang sa hyperbola, so the absolute value of distance 2 minus distance 1 is equal to 2a. So, since naanay computation sa distance is equal to 37.2, so equals 2a. So, i-divide lang, so our a is, so 37.2 divide 2. So, 18.6. So, our A is 18.6. Yan. So, since nanatay A, nanatay point, any point sa ating okay, so our A is 18.6. So, since nanatay A na 18.6, so our C is the center to focus. Since our A and B is our focus, so from the center to focus, so our C here is 50. So nanatay A, nanatay C. So to compute for B, since to compute for B, magamit ta og from this formula. So B squared equals C squared minus A squared. C is 50 minus 18.6. So B squared equals, so 50 times 50 is 25 minus 345.96. So B squared is 2,154.04. So, our B squared is 2,154.04. So, mag-stop lang atong computation diri. So, since our equation is naka B squared. Okay, so next is erase ata diri. So, na niya. Okay, so since ang question is, where is the ship? So, kani man ato ang itaon. So, from the, since ang origin is center, then naka-horizontal. So, center, origin, horizontal. So, ang equation natong gamiton is x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. So, since na A, ang nato is 18.6. Ang B nato is 2,154.04. So, i-substitute lang. Then, naatay na point na i-compute x 50. So, ani? X 50. So, x squared, ang A is 18.6. So, 18.6 squared. So, 345.96. Sorry, 345.96. Minus, so our y is 50. So, 50 squared over, so 50 squared, dito na lang nato ha, 25. 25 over b squared is 2,154.04. equals 1. So, kani, ibalhin dari sa pikas. X squared over 345.96 equals 1 plus 25 over 2,154.30. Then, i-add, round off na lang to 2 decimal places. So, magiging 1.16. Magiging x squared over 345.96 equals 1 plus 1.60 equals 2.16. Then, i-cross multiply. So, since naman yung invisible 1, so 1 times x squared is x squared. Then, 2.16 times 345.96. So, x squared equals, so multiply 2.16 times 345.96, 747.27. 747.27. So, to eradicate the exponent, so ato na siyang i-square root. So, cancel. So, x equals the square root of 747.27. So, the answer is 27.34, round off to 2 decimal places. So, therefore, the shape is at the point of 27.34. Ayan.